Hello. Welcome. Char's Landing. Alleged mermaid Emcee Dare Hanebury is a Alberni writer of poetry, fiction, and creative nonfiction, who had taught here at North Island College for many years. His last book, Both Sides Now, is a collaboration of short fiction and with two of his past students. His upcoming solo collection, entitled Something Else, is now out.
Thank you, Karl. All right. Welcome. Finally live here at Char's again, and I gotta say, I love the low lighting. My lines disappear. No, it's all good. It's all good. I've never looked so good on camera. It's perfect. Thank you. Can you hear me at the back there in Char's Landing? Okay. All right, the lights are coming up. Oh, it's a front door. All right, we're getting set up here. All right, the front door is closed. Let the show begin. Welcome to live from Char's Landing in beautiful downtown Port Alberni. Your mic's cutting out. Oh, I'm cutting in and out. Oh dear. Okay. Connection. Just join. Sure. Okay, we're good. Hello, I don't need to hit join audio then. Just click off there. Everybody hear me okay now?
Say in Zoom land.
In Zoom land, a few show of hands. Yeah, I got some nods. Awesome. Okay. All right. Okay, well, we've got a full slate of reading on for tonight, so I'm quite excited to hear what our open micers and our featured readers are going to share with us. Great to have everybody here. For those of you joining us for the first time who might not know about Char's Landing, Char is our hostess with the mostest who makes the Zoom happen and also runs Char's Landing here in Port Alberni, which is the local literary hotspot once a month when we get together here and do the Electric Mermaid. And in the meantime, she's a hotspot for all kinds of entertainment and various community groups that meet here. So we're ever grateful to Char for all she does to keep Port Alberni exciting and alive and happening. Also, yes, big round of applause for Char. So for those who come here live, they throw $10 or so into the donation pot. For those of you at home, if you're so able, any e-transfers would be appreciated. Just e-transfer at charslanding.com, and maybe someone can throw that up in the chat. Karl, it's in there already. He's a step ahead of me. So big thank you to Karl. He's our moderator who helps to keep things flowing along here. And also super gratitude to Jackie Carmichael, who I hope is listening. I know she's not feeling that great tonight, so she's just going to listen in front of a black screen, she said. But Jackie is in the midst of selling her house and moving to St. Albert, Alberta. So she's going to be withdrawing her artistic director services from Electric Mermaid, and we're just want to say a huge thank you to all that she's done to catapult Electric Mermaid ahead during the pandemic, to build our national and even international audience and supply of readers out there. She's done an outstanding job of tracking writers down, getting them on board, writing press releases, and just being an all-around go-to person who gets things done. So thank you, Jackie, so much, and we're so grateful for all you've done. Big kudos to you. And she says she's going to stay in touch via Zoom while she's in Alberta and that. So we look forward to seeing her then. And in the meantime, we're crossing our fingers for your house to sell real quick for you. All right. My name's Derek Hanebury, as Karl said, and I've been here in Port Alberni for many years and been around since the start of Char's Landing and the beginning of spoken word events here in Port Alberni. So I must be honest and confess it was my students who took the reins and got things going. Vicky and Libby, who are here tonight in the audience, Vicky Drybrow and Libby Moran, they were instrumental in getting the first reading series going down at Smitty's restaurant many years ago. And it's evolved through all kinds of iterations since then. But always at the core of what we do here is the hope that we come together to share what we create, to listen respectfully, to share things from our hearts and know that they will be accepted for what they are. We come here to share the love of good language, of the right words in the right order, as so famously was said in the past. So what we don't welcome, of course, is hate language, hate speech, or slagging people. There's lots of that going on online. So if that's what you want to do, go online. Fortunately, most people are very, very respectful here. And so we encourage readers to join and listen, and writers of all levels to join us. We don't discriminate. We're just happy that people apply their creative abilities to the spoken word or the written word and then come here and share it. So if you're out there and listening and unsure, please consider joining us and sharing some of your work. We'd love to have you. And so all you need to do is go to electricmermaidreads@gmail.com and you can sign up ahead of time to be an open mic reader. So every month we have at least 15 open mic spots available. And then we usually do a couple of featured readers that get a little bit longer. Open mic spots are 5 minutes. So I think that's all the preamble. Karl, did I forget anything? No, all right, I'm on track so far, so good. So we're gonna have a couple of our open mic readers to start us out. And then after that, we're gonna go to our featured readers. So our first open micer is coming to us online on Zoom, and that's Atma Frans. And I believe you're coming to us from Gibson'S Landing. So I'm gonna open for you and turn the floor over to you. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I'm a poet, but once in a while I also write prose. And tonight I want to share an older piece I published about 5 years ago in the New Quarterly. And it's a flash fiction piece. It's called The Begging Bowl. The boy stands back and looks at them. Their orange robes swirl around their bony legs. The shaved heads bent forward. The right hand holds a wooden bowl, a begging bowl, his mother says. Slender fingers grasp the rim of the bowl, with the other hand rests on the heavy gate, pushes it open, then closes it. He's not allowed inside, the boy. He stares at the gate opening and closing and tries to see what lies beyond. He glimpses a patch of foliage and sky before the monk's fingers release the door, and the door closes shut on his brother. The boy stands on the hot sand in the square, now empty. His brother has gone where he can't follow, and even his mind can't rush through the heaviness of the gate. It can only run backwards, back to the beginning of the day when he crouched at the creek behind his house. He hid between the reeds, hoping if his mother didn't find him, then his brother wouldn't leave. He squatted down and the slippery mud seeped up between his toes. Mosquitoes buzzed around his bare legs. He stayed still and wished he could take time in his hand, wrap it into a ball and squeeze it so it couldn't go anywhere. He bit his lip hard so he wouldn't cry. His brother came out of the house, sat down on the grassy bank nearby and lowered his feet into the water. The creek ran by in a babble from the dark middle of the forest, past the market where his mother sold papayas she grew in her garden, past wild bits of jungle where snakes slid between branches, past yellow grass that buffaloes broke between their jaws. The boy tried not to look at the flowing creek, nor at the water his brother splashed on his feet, and instead He stared down at the mud between his toes. In the mud, time stood still. Now the boy stands in the empty square and time weighs down like the heavy balls of dough his mother stretches into flatbreads, pulling and flattening them between her hands. The boy's eyelashes flutter against the glare of the midday sun. A small bird picks up a grain of rice which spilled from the meal they shared before the gate closed shut on his brother. His mother touches his shoulder and the boy pulls away, breaks into a run. His feet pound the ground and the dirt flies up in hard clods against his calves, but he keeps running. The hot air burns his lungs, but he keeps running. A cold iron hand wrenches his heart from between his ribs, but he keeps running. Past houses which lean forward with shutters closed, past vendors who sell glasses of mint tea, past men who sit in the shade murmuring prayers while their fingers touch the rough surface of beads. The world around him turns into a blur of yellow-brown dust and sun. His blood pounds in his ears and tears stream down his face. The boy is ashamed of his abandonment to grief, but he keeps running, so the world won't come to a standstill. So he won't have to enter his house and see the empty chair his brother sat on, sorting the stones out of the rice, sifting the grains through his slender fingers which now hold the rim of a begging bowl. Thank you.
Yeah, we're good now. Is that coming through okay? Cutting out. Here. There we go. Is that better? Okay. I'm going to hold my hand on that wire. Lovely, Atma, and just reminded me of the ability of a writer to take control of time and move us through a series of imagery that tells a story. Oh, out again. In a minute. How's that? Is that better? Yeah. Okay. Feels solid. We're good now. So I don't know how much you heard of that, Atma, but I just was admiring how you took control of time in that story and wove the story through imagery and allowed it to emerge at its own pace and its own power and let it build. That was beautiful. I'm not surprised it got published. And it shows the power of flash fiction, right? It doesn't have to be a long story to have a punch and huge amount of emotion. Thank you so much for that. All right, we're moving on. Bill Engleson was going to be our next reader, but I'm not seeing Bill online. So I think we're going to have to move ahead. If Bill shows up a little bit later, we'll tuck him in at the end. And we'll get Micki Findlay is the next in line. She's gonna read to us. So she's zooming into us tonight from down Coombs Arrington Way. How are you tonight, Micki?
I'm groovy. Thanks, Derek.
Good, good. And what are you gonna?
You invited me to read my story Exposed, but I'm not going to read that. It was just published in Chicken Soup in a book called Too Funny. And the reason I'm not going to read it is because my lovely friend here, Bryce, actually read that last time for me when I was sick. So you guys had a preview of it. So thanks, Herb. But I am going to read one that's kind of close to that one. So here goes. It's called The Unveiling. It's a cloudless Sunday afternoon in May. My husband and I waved goodbye to the last of the church-going stragglers as we walked towards our lemon yellow convertible, a vehicle my husband purchased from a rather questionable character who neglected to tell us that the roof leaked on the passenger side. But on idyllic days like this, I'm grateful as sunshine warms my face and balmy breezes follow us on country roads. I hadn't seen Bob at church this morning, which seemed strange because he never misses a service. Bob is in the hospital, someone said. He's dying. A heavy lump lodges in my throat as I try to digest the news. Although we're not close friends, I've always appreciated Bob's kind and cheery nature. My husband and I decide to pay him a visit, but I feel anxious about what we might see. So anxious, in fact, I'm almost changed my mind several times. We pull into a tree-shaded space in the hospital parking lot. Leaving the vinyl roof down, we step out of the car and head towards the massive beige building, its outdated design revealing its age. Just as we're entering the main lobby, I hear a man's voice call out to my husband, who whirls around to answer. "Who was that?" I ask as the elevator door opens. "Just my boss from the pulp mill wanting to say hello." The elevator stops at the 3rd floor, the men's ward. We're not sure where to go, so I ask a silver-haired ward clerk at the front desk. "Just down the hall, 4th door on your right." She grins. "He'll be so pleased to see you. He doesn't get many visitors." As we approach the door to Bob's room, my heart thumps violently in my chest. My palms feel sweaty. I've never visited a dying person before. What will he look like? What do I say? What if I say the wrong thing? I look up at my husband to see if he's sharing my angst, but his face remains stoic, as always. What I've learned from this man in our 19 years of marriage is that showing emotion equates to weakness, and weakness is not acceptable. As for me, emotion oozes out of every pore. More often than not, I'm an embarrassment to him. At the very least, a perplexing enigma, one he doesn't even try to figure out. As we step into the sterile, sallow green room, an antiseptic smell assaults my nostrils. I immediately see Bob. His eyes are closed, his face pasty gray. My chest tightens, my stomach feels queasy. My eyes dart back to the door. "He's sleeping," I whisper. "Maybe we should go." Suddenly, Bob's eyes struggle to open as if made of lead. He turns his head slowly to look at us. His chapped lips curl into a grin as recognition sets in. I can feel myself start to relax as I catch a glimpse of that all too familiar eye twinkle. Maybe this won't be so hard after all. Despite his gaunt appearance, Bob is as cheery as ever, although his words are slurred and his voice gravelly. He tells us he's happy we came to see him, but our visit is cut short as his eyes begin to flutter closed. I softly call out his name, but he's fallen back to sleep. I feel sad for Bob, seeing him like this. I'm hoping our visit has given him some measure of peace, knowing that someone cared enough to check in on him. After our visit, we head back to the car in silence. A cool breeze is tousling the treetops as a mournful wail sirens the coming of a storm. Feeling exceptionally chilly, I reach out to the back seat to grab my sweater. As I bend down, a gusty blast blows through me and ripples down my leg. Strange that it's gotten so cold so quickly. I hug my sweater tightly around me, yanking it down to cover my backside. But something's not right. As I reach around, my fingertips graze bare skin. Skin? How can this be? Confused, I reach my hand around again, unable to fully comprehend what's happening. I can feel an enormous gaping hole peering through frayed material on my white cotton pants. The truth is undeniable. My bare bottom is completely exposed. But how? Why? I start to laugh, a nervous, awkward giggle. What's so funny? I stop laughing. How can I tell him? He'll be furious. He can't stand being embarrassed. It's a funny word, embarrass. Ass? I start laughing again. What is up with you? He frowns. Get in the car and let's go. but I just stand there, my feet cemented to the pavement. How do I explain to him that his wife has been exposing her derriere as brazenly as a peacock strutting its tail feathers? I open the car door and twists it, hoping he can't see, gritting my teeth as the cold vinyl shoots through my bare flesh. My husband stares at me, but I'm afraid to return his gaze. I hear myself saying, I want to go home. Why? I'm hungry. Let's go eat lunch first. No, we have to go home now. What is wrong with you? Why are you in such a rush to get home? I don't feel well. You were feeling well a minute ago. What is your problem? Silence. My pants are ripped. What? When did this happen? I didn't see anything. Silence. I soaked my pants in bleach. I didn't know it would make a hole. Show me. No, let's just go home. Seriously, how bad can it be? Let me see. There is no way out of this. You're not going to like it. Oh, for God's sake, woman, just show me already. Shivering, I slowly get out of the car and turn around, sucking in my breath. There is no response. I step back into the car and wait for the inevitable. I'm afraid to look at him, but eventually I muster up the courage. His eyes are bulging, his jaw taut. He's silent for what seems like forever. His eyes begin to narrow into piercing slits. His eyebrows start to furrow. He's gripping the steering wheel so tightly, his knuckles are turning white. Looking straight ahead, he finally speaks. So you're telling me that we just walked through the hospital with your bare backside showing the whole time? The whole time? I squeak out a tiny voice. I think so. So you're saying that my boss saw everything? I don't know, maybe? Well, how could he have missed it? Oh my God, what's he gonna think? I'll tell you what he's gonna think, that I can't afford to buy you clothes. Why don't you have any underwear on? I do. I'm wearing a girdle, but there's a hole in it. I didn't throw it out because the front of it still works. Made perfect sense to me, as my mother had regularly pounded into me, don't throw anything out until you absolutely have to. But it's clear to me that my husband is not following the logic. He is seething. Laughter bubbles up again, and I push it down quickly before he notices. He shoves the key into the ignition and, without a word, pulls out of the hospital parking lot, tires screeching. As the week drags on, my husband barely speaks to me. He avoids me as if I'm diseased. And although I can't help but let a little giggle slip out now and again, when I think back to that day, I can't help but feel a bit sorry for him, as he could never allow himself to see the humor in what transpired. Other times, compassion is replaced by a deep sense of shame when his disgust towards me shatters my self-worth like stones thrown against glass. For many years, even after the end of our marriage, shame was an ever-present, unwelcome companion. I suppose I learned something on that cloudless sunny afternoon in May, that being frugal is one thing, being cheap is another. But in my defense, I was brought up by a single mother who taught me that when your clothing got old, you wore it until it fell apart. If there was a hole, you patched it. If something broke, you glued it. If you didn't like the food placed in front of you, you ate it anyway. If you didn't, you went without. But my thriftiness, although understandable, had risen to an eccentric level of back-end blunder, derriere delusion, fanny faux pas. A lot has changed since those days. Shame is no longer a part of my everyday life. I no longer see myself as embarrassment, but rather someone worthy of love and acceptance. The journey to wholeness and self-respect hasn't always been easy, but it's been one worth taking. And happily, I'm now with a man who laughs along with me through life's quirks and foibles. I admit I still tend to wear my clothes too long, but I'm a lot more careful about how I wield that bleach bottle. And my undergarments, well, I need to buy new ones if I were to be honest. But these days, I'm much more diligent about checking for holes. After all, I like to think my days of unveiling are over. The end. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
I have the 10-minute slot, by the way. I wasn't being greedy, honest.
No worries, I had forgotten, but it's all right. Karl knew. That's all that matters. Great, thank you for that, Micki. And that I love the tension between the humor and the angst in that piece worked really.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Derek.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, we're going to move on to our featured readers now. We're starting with Lesley Gentil, who's coming to us from Brentwood Bay this evening. And Lesley, I'm going to just read a few things out for you, Lesley, so I don't get them wrong. For those of you who maybe didn't get a chance to read about her on the website there, her debut novel, Elvis, Me and the Lemonade Stand Summer, and who could write a better title than that? That's fantastic, was released by Cormorant Books in February 2021, and it won the 18th Annual Victoria Children's Book Awards for 2021. And is a finalist in both the Rocky Mountain and Silver Birch Book Awards for 2022. It's already gone into its third printing in under a year, which is amazing. So she lives with her two of her adult children. And she plays with them, performs with them as the Lesley Gentil Band. Maybe we'll get a little music out of you later, Lesley. We'll concentrate on the literary art first. So she's going to read to us from that children's book that she wrote, and 10 or 15 minutes, and then we're going to open it up for a few questions and answers. So if you think of anything you'd like to ask Lesley, just jot it down, or you can put something in the chat if you'd like me to bring the question up. For people here, if you want to just pop up to the mic here at Char's Landing, you can ask the question from there, or you can holler it at me and I'll repeat it, whatever works. So we're going to turn it over to you now, Lesley. Welcome to Electric Mermaid. We're so happy to have you here, and we're just waiting with bated breath to hear your book. Go for it.
Thank you so much. It's a real treat to be here tonight. My book, I'll just jump in and get started. My book is a middle grade novel. There it is, with all my page markers. It takes place in 1978, so it is the year after Elvis Presley died, or in the press it said he died. There was all those rumors, right? And he was seen in different places. This takes place on an Indigenous reserve. And just to clarify, I made the decision to use the term Indian reserve because that was the language of the day. We've moved on to more respectful language. And just to clarify too, I am part Indigenous. And so I'm going to stop talking and read. The summer Elvis came into my life, he drove right up to my lemonade stand in a Volkswagen, a gold-colored sunbug super beetle, and nothing was ever the same after that. Okay, so it may not have been the real Elvis. After all, it had been widely reported that he'd been dead for almost a year. But then you never really know for sure, right? A lot of the magazines and newspapers at the Food Mart checkout claimed that he still was alive, and every once in a while he was photographed hanging out in places like laundromats. So it was entirely possible that he had pulled up to my lemonade stand in a gold sunbug. And this guy sure looked like Elvis, sounded like him, and acted like him. Or how I imagined Elvis would act if he got to live like a normal person and showed up for a glass of lemonade at a trailer stand in front of a rundown trailer park on an Indian reserve. So here's how the summer started. Auntie Elle insisted that I set up a lemonade stand on the side of the road in front of our trailer park. She hauled out some old pieces of plywood and set it up on some rickety old sawhorses that she'd found lying out in the junk pile behind the shed beside her trailer. It looked pretty bad even to Auntie Elle, who was always so darned positive about everything. so she covered it with an old tablecloth she didn't mind me using outdoors, which is how I ended up with a Christmas tablecloth with dancing snowmen on it to cover my lemonade stand. Years before, someone had embroidered, "Have a cool Yule, y'all," in green thread along the frayed edges. And while it was festive, it did not exactly scream lemonade stand. Auntie L had even invested in 6 cans of lemonade to get me started, let me borrow her blue plastic juice jug and some mismatched plastic glasses, and provided ice cubes from the metal tray in the old fridge she kept out on her back porch. So I really didn't have much choice in the end. I tried to tell her that at 11 years old, I was way too old for running a lemonade stand, but she just smiled, ignored my complaints, and kept setting up. Her name is really Ella Charlie, and she owns the trailer park. When I was little, just learning to walk around on the uneven ground in the trailer park, I heard all her relatives calling her Auntie Ella. I thought they were saying Auntie L. Somehow the name caught on, and now everyone, even her own family, call her that. Auntie L is Coast Salish. Clarice, my mom, is white, but I know that my dad is an Indian. Clarice has never bothered to tell me anything about him, so this is just guesswork on my part. As a natural blonde, Clarice sunburns easily and has fine, delicate features, as she likes to say. I have darker skin and hair, am short and a bit stocky, so I figure I must take after my dad, and the only thing I know about him is he must be native. Anyways, Auntie L is the nicest, kindest person I've ever met and is always cheerful. She sees the best in people. She also keeps an eye out for me. And she's always been someone I could count on ever since my mom and I moved into the trailer park, which is a good thing, because one thing Clarice cannot be called, and that is maternal. So I'm going to read a section where Truly goes to the neighboring farm with twins who live on the reserve, who are native, to trade a salmon for some strawberries from one of the farmers down the road. Just then, Auntie L came out of her trailer with a salmon wrapped up in a newspaper. She handed it to me, saying, "I want you to take this over to Mrs. Wyman at the farm. I owe her for all those extra strawberries she gave to me." She said to Agnes and Linda, "Why don't you girls go too? You can see them puppies." When we got there, I knocked on the farmhouse back door and then waited. After a few moments, Mrs. Wyman opened it. When she saw the big salmon Auntie L had sent with us, she got a huge smile on her face. "Well, this is great," she said. "I wasn't expecting another one so soon." Then she looked past me at the twins, who hung back shyly on the driveway, and said in a really kind voice, "Hello there, you're Esther's girls, aren't you?" They nodded politely, keeping their eyes lowered. "Truly, why don't you take the girls into the barn to see the puppies?" she suggested. "I'll be right out as soon as I put this in the fridge." The door closed behind her, and the 3 of us headed into the barn, me leading the way. I felt important as I explained to them how to slowly approach Lady and let her sniff their hands. I knelt down, stroked a little brown puppy on the head, and picked him up gently. "Oh," breathed Agnes, "they're so cute." The twins sat and gently petted all of the scrambling puppies and laughed delightedly at their antics. After a few moments, Mrs. Wyman came into the barn, and the twins stood up quietly and moved back from the puppies. I could tell that they were nervous being in the barn, seeing as the Wymans were white folks and all. I saw that Agnes and Linda were braced and waiting to see how they would be treated before they could relax. They just slipped into it, like putting on a protective jacket. Mrs. Wyman smiled at us kindly and said, "Well, you girls thank Auntie L for that lovely salmon." Then she added, "How's the lemonade stand going, Truly?" "Things are going great. I've saved $5.45 so far," I said proudly. She nodded at me and seemed pleased. "That's just great, Truly. I really mean that." Then she picked up another big basket of berries from the table, saying, "You girls take these to Auntie L, will you please? That salmon is much larger than I expected, and I feel I owe her more berries in exchange." Then she picked up a small pint basket and handed it to Agnes, smiling kindly. Here's one you girls can snack on the way back to Eagle Shores. That way I know Andy L's strawberries will get to her safely. We all thanked her and headed back to the trailer, eating the sweet berries as we went. She sure is nice for a white lady, said Linda. This final section I'm going to read is a birthday party for Truly that Andy L has organized, an outdoor picnic dinner with hot dogs, and everyone in the trailer park has come, but Clarice has not come. And then it was time for my birthday cake. I watched wide-eyed as Esther lit the candles and Agnes and Linda together carefully carried the cake over to where I sat, with everyone singing happy birthday. I ducked my head shyly, my heart full to bursting. Make a wish, said Agnes and Linda, and I thought hard. It seemed so important that I make the right wish. I closed my eyes tightly. Please let me find my dad, I wished. Let him be happy to meet me too. Then everyone cheered and clapped as I blew out the candles. Esther and Andy L served up the cake and put ice cream on everyone's plates, and the twins carefully handed out the plates to each person. I took a bite of Esther's cake and then a mouthful of Elvis's ice cream. It was the best cake and ice cream I'd ever had. In the evening light, I looked around at everybody at the party. My party. I couldn't ever remember feeling so happy. When everyone had eaten their cake, Elvis quietly opened up his guitar case and took out his guitar. He stood up and said, smiling right at me, "In honor of your birthday, I thought I would give you your very own special concert, Truly." I was speechless. Then he started to play and sing, just for me. Every song he'd made famous, from Blue Suede Shoes to All Shook Up and more. Everyone cheered and clapped after each song and yelled for more. It was wonderful, until Clarice drove up in her old beater. Her car careened off the road and then lurched to a stop beside Andy L's trailer. The driver's door opened and she fell out giggling. She staggered to her feet, looking around, and yelled, "Hey, Truly, where the heck are you?" And then she started laughing almost hysterically. We all sat in shock, listening to her. I was frozen to the kitchen chair that I sat on, and I couldn't move. Even though I knew I should rush over to her and try to stop her drunken yelling. Even though she was humiliating me in front of everyone, I couldn't seem to make myself move. She staggered into Andy L's porch, and I heard the sound of glass smashing, and then another bang, and then her laughing hysterically again. Andy L sighed and pulled herself to her feet. "I'm going to have a talk with her," she said. "Everybody stay here and enjoy this party." "No, Mama," said Raymond quietly. "I think it's time I had a talk with Clarice about the way things have been going." Raymond stood up, and that's when Clarice came stumbling into view. She stopped, weaving, and stared when she saw all of us sitting around the campfire having a party here at Andy L's. Then she threw her head back and started to laugh. She leaned forward and slapped her knee and said, "Well, what do you know? There's a party going on. How come you didn't invite me?" Raymond strode over to her, took her firmly by the arm, and said, "Clarice, I think you need to settle down," in his calm but firm voice. Clarice shook off his arm and said, "Hey, nobody loves a party like I do. I want to stay." Then she looked around at us all and said the most horrible thing she could say. "So, what's the special occasion?" I felt my heart exploding in my chest. I felt hot tears roll down my cheeks. Clarice had already forgotten that it was my birthday.
Wow, thank you for that. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to start out the question and answer here, Lesley, because I'm curious. How did the idea for this story come to you? Was there a dream that you can remember that was the exciting Nova?
Yeah, several years ago, my husband and I were at the Saanich Fair, local community fair, with another couple, some friends of ours, and the wife had had a really interesting childhood. She was raised in San Francisco by a single mom. She had two brothers who had different dads, and they, at one point, literally lived on the corner of Haight and Ashbury, right in the heart of San Francisco, in an abandoned doll factory. And everyone, she said, squatted in like corners of this doll factory. And she can remember being about 3 years old and having like, there were doll parts, like heads and arms of dolls, which was really bizarre to me. And that was just, yeah, her life. Her mom, she said, was very obsessed with Elvis. And back to the fair, there was an Elvis impersonator, and I said, "Hey, let's go watch the impersonator. He'll be really fun." And she said, "Oh, you know, I just don't do Elvis." My mom was obsessed with Elvis Presley, and she used to sew costumes for Elvis impersonators. And at one point, one of her many stepfathers was an Elvis impersonator. And I started to wonder about that. And I thought, does an Elvis impersonator turn off when they're home? Or, do you hand them a coffee and do they say, thank you very much? Or, would a child get that this isn't the real Elvis? Would there be? And then I started to think, well, what if the child knew it was Elvis and no one else did? And that was the germ of the story. And when I began to write it, I had the image of a young girl sitting bored on the side of a road on a hot summer day. And I sat down at my computer and I asked her, why are you here? And she told me, because I got this dumb lemonade stand and nobody's going to come. And, that's how I feel like I got out of the way and the characters told me their story.
Beautiful. Yeah, happens when those characters can start speaking on their own and you just step back and take dictation. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, a brilliant story. And
Thank you.
love hearing where it comes from too. Any other questions from the audience out there, either in the house here or online? Just unmute and pipe up if you're in Zoom land. Yeah. Not seeing anything there. Anybody in the house got me curious?
Sure, Derek.
Oh.
Sure, I'll ask a question. So Lesley, what publishing, how did you go about publishing your book?
That's a really great question. I'm a bit of a research geek, so I looked up Canadian publishers who were accepting unsolicited manuscripts because I didn't have a literary agent. I still don't. And I found a list of them and I looked at what they were publishing and I actually went to the library and got out some of their books and read them and thought, does my story fit their catalog? Because they all have their niche. And I found one, Dancing Cat Books, which is a subsidiary of Cormorant Books, and I submitted it. I looked up how to submit. Oh, I got to backtrack. I literally looked up what is the length of a middle grade novel, and it was 40,000 words. So I think I was like 2 words under 40,000 when I finished. I was so careful about that. So I looked up what their submission guidelines were, and they took it by email, which was awesome. So I submitted it that way.
Wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, beautiful. And although it's for middle grade kids, I can see adults definitely resonating with this story as well and delighting in it. In fact, my mother-in-law, who's an absolute Elvis freak, I think I'm going to get it for her birthday. I mean, it's got elements that can appeal to the adult audience as well, right? Were you thinking about how to balance that out when you were writing, or just let it evolve?
You mean the darker sides of the story?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was very cautious to make sure, first of all, Truly's character she's really resilient. and she's a survivor. And she's very matter of fact about her life because it's all she's known. Her mom's an alcoholic and is not an attentive mother, but she's got Andy L in her life, so she does have that safety net. And you know, when things get rough, she sleeps on Andy L's covered porch. There's a couch with a blanket and a pillow there, always for her. And I tried to balance the harsher scenes with something kind or even funny happening right before and or right after, so that it was balanced. And when I wrote it, I was thinking young adult, and the publisher said no, middle grade, and I was really, oh my God, you know, but little kids. But I'm really amazed when I do readings and I talk to kids of the age level they put it at. The questions I get from them are really phenomenal. I've done some online ones, and you know, one of the questions I had from a 10-year-old was, if you had some advice for someone living in a situation like Truly and Clarice's, what would it be? I was like, oh,
Wow.
yeah.
Beautiful. Awesome. Have to move along. I just glanced at the time. Oh my God, it's already 10 to 7 already. Thank you so much for that, Lesley. That was.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been wonderful to partake in.
I just want to mention that your books are available at Chapters and online at Amazon, right? Or Chapters on.
Yeah, they're in every bookstore across Canada and the US, apparently, as well.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So, and maybe if you're around later on at the end, we have time for chat, or at the break here, we're going to take a break in another 10, 15 minutes, and people might come up with things that they want to ask you about then, if that's all right with you. So, thanks. Okay, our next featured reader is yours truly. And so I signed on for featured. This way? This way. Okay. There. So, go. Yeah, it's still cutting out. Okay, I'm going to head over to the lectern here and we'll get started from there. Just hang on. All right, how's this one sound? Good? Clear? All right, that's what we want. So this is my new book, Something Else Altogether. It's a collection of short stories that I began many, many years ago. So I've read a lot of these stories over the years here at Char's and at different venues. So it is sprinkled with new stories as well. But I'm going to just kind of give you a little sampling out of a few different stories just to kind of whet your appetite here. And it's going to start with one called New Territory, and this is fairly autobiographical story, I'll admit at this point. I'm just going to read you a little bit from the beginning and then a little bit from much further on in the story. It's about a holiday I took with my family when I was a young lad. And I think I'm going to have to put my glasses on to make sure I don't miss words here. That's better. Okay. I'll crack your neck, my father says as he chases my brother around the campsite. My brother loops the tent and passes the picnic table where my father has, with my father 2 paces behind him. And then he clears the rusty iron grill over the fire pit and lights out down the road without looking back to see if my father is coming or not. My father stops running and calls after him. But my brother keeps on running down around the corner, past the row of canvas tents and tent trailers, and disappears into the heart of the campground in Letchworth State Park. So much for this family holiday, I think, and go back to eating my bowl of shreddies. So that's the premise of the story, and then it kind of backs up and goes into some backstory, how my brother was in adolescence and going through all kinds of changes, and And as his younger brother, I couldn't understand it. And then we flash forward. 3 summers later, we take my mother's Renault to Grand Bend, a hokey little beach town on the shore of Lake Huron, where the water isn't laced with chemicals like Lake Erie and Ontario have become. My brother is driving now, and I've entered that strange world of adolescence too. So we once again forge an alliance against the adult world. I'm even allowed to come into his room in the evenings to sneak a cigarette before bed. He drops me and my friend Hank Rickenbacker at the main public beach before heading over to hang out with a couple of friends, girls that he knows who are staying at a cottage for the week with one of their parents. Hank and I go for a swim, and then he hones in on 2 young beauties sunbathing 2 blankets over from where we're parked. From our vantage point, they appear to be all oil and undone straps. The sun is hot, and the sand scalds the bottom of our feet when we finally screw up our courage to go over and talk to them. But before long, we're joking and laughing like old friends. Hank is busy trying to take their picture with their little Kodak brownie when I see my brother's friend, Sally Harper, hurrying across the beach towards us. Her face looks way too white for this late in the summer, and her voice is all shaky and weird when she says, "You got to come right away. The ambulance is on its way. He just dove in was all." "Hank, we've got to go," I say, but he's too busy backing up to get the girls framed in the viewfinder. "Okay, say cheese," he says, and then steps back another foot. "Hank, come on," I shout. When we get to the private beach, a small crowd has gathered. My brother is being carried along the shore on a stretcher with his head sandbagged on both sides, but he's conscious at least. And when I ask him if he's okay, he says, "I'm all right, brother, don't worry." He doesn't tell me that he has no feeling in his body, or that he bit his tongue when his head hit the sandbar, or that he held his breath for those few seconds when he lost consciousness before he came to, lying unable to move with his face a few inches from the surface. He doesn't say how he started to get really hot, as if every cigarette he ever smoked was burning inside him, until he knew he was going to have to breathe in that first gasp of Lake Huron. He never mentions that the girls pulled his head out of the water at the absolute last second, and taking an arm and a leg each, dragged him into shore with his head lolling backwards, toggling like a dead man's head would toggle. And what good fortune placed the vacationing doctor sunbathing on the private beach that day. So when the ambulance driver wanted to load my brother onto the stretcher like a sack of turnips, the doctor insisted that his head be immobilized and a fracture board slid under him first, possibly saving his life and definitely saving his nervous system. Hank and I have a blast in the ambulance, racing through small towns at over 100 miles an hour with the sirens wailing, shooting peace signs at all the curious people, curious faces turned to get a glimpse of someone else's misfortune, a grief we don't even know we should share. We make the 30 miles to St. Jude's Hospital, where both my parents work, in less than 20 minutes. And when I see them standing in the emergency driveway, they look smaller somehow than I ever have seen them look. In my memory's eyes, they're shrunken almost to the size of children. No doubt they've seen too many kids like him bedridden or confined to a wheelchair for the rest of their lives. All I know is he's told me he's okay, and I'm going with that until a few hours later, driving home, when my mother tells me he has a triple fracture in his neck and won't be coming home for a long time. I think my father stayed most of the night at the hospital, no doubt wishing there was a way he could reel back time and breathe his words back into his mouth and past the lump that plugged up his throat. The good news is that somewhere between the beach and the hospital, when Hank and I should have been praying instead of goofing around, feeling slowly started to inch back into my brother's body. Thank you. Okay, now, oh, that's better. Thank you, Char. You're a savior. There is light. All right. Okay, so I want to read just a little bit from a story called The Gift of Water. This one's primarily fiction, but it came from a trip I took down to South Dakota a few years ago, and went to this coffee shop where there was a psychic reader happening, and met this woman who looked like your average, housewife, and she was sitting knitting at the table actually, and there weren't any other seats. So we said, "Could we join you?" And she said, "Oh yeah, no problem." And we hadn't sat down for 30 seconds when she said, "I have a Derringer in my purse." So anyway, we talked to her for a few hours, and this story kind of evolved slowly out of that. But the protagonist in this story is a woman, and she and her husband went to the coffee shop, and they were going to get a reading from the psychic reader. But instead, they met this woman, the one with the Derringer, in line, and she was there with her husband, and they had lost their child to a school shooting, and they were waiting to go in for a reading. But the reader said only one person can come in at a time, so they didn't have enough money for both of them to go. So the protagonist and her husband said, "Oh, well, here, you go. We don't need to go." Gave her the $20, and they chatted a little bit, and then she left. So that woman's name is Mercy, and the protagonist remains unnamed. But the protagonist is dealing with an old trauma she's trying to put to rest, and that's having had an abortion when she was very young. So the protagonist gets triggered about her abortion. She goes for a walk, and then she comes back into town, gets driven back into town actually by that couple whose reading she had paid for, and they drop her off in Hot Springs, South Dakota, where there is a place called the Kidney Springs, and it's a hot springs that just comes out of the side of the rock there and is supposed to have healing powers and is associated with Mother Mary. The light of the Kidney Springs gazebo looms ahead, and I ask them to let me out there. As they drive away, I decide to spend some time at the spring before heading back to the hotel. I find myself angry for some reason as they drive off. Maybe I want what they have and feel pissed that I can't have it. Maybe I should have gone back to the coffee house and gambled $20 on a reading. Without Harley there, that's her husband, I might even have had a chance of believing whatever that reader had to say. I cover the last few yards to the gazebo more slowly and step under the dome of light. The spring water spills out of a small tap and into a shallow basin. I reach out and feel the warm water flowing between my fingers. Without thinking, I reach under the top of my blouse and touch my wet fingers to the skin above my heart. I can feel it ricocheting against my chest, delivering its familiar ache, the one that has ebbed and flowed through most of my adult life. Maybe Marcy was right. Maybe other babies can't take away the pain. Maybe I didn't even deserve other babies, healthy babies who never had to cower under their desk waiting to be shot. Babies who lived long enough to step out in the world on their own and make their own choices. Maybe I really deserve an eternity in hell. The faces of the two young girls in the coffee house flare in my mind, their accusatory blue eyes piercing and righteously proud. Before I can loose the scream that is building up inside me, I hear footsteps approaching down the pathway. I stare into the dark to see if I need to worry, but my eyes are too used to the artificial light in the gazebo, and I can't see anything. For a moment, I wonder if I wouldn't feel safer with a Derringer in my purse. The footfalls sound too light to be Harley's. Gradually, a female figure begins to take shape as it draws closer to me, emerging out of the deepening darkness. "So here you are. Thank Christ I found you, she says. I have had a moment's peace all night." It takes a moment until I recognize the face of Micki, the reader from the Flatiron Coffee House. Her thick hair is cut short, and something in her matter-of-fact way of speaking puts me at ease, even though I think she's confused. She's wearing a tight dress with a neckline my mother would have called brazen. "I'm sorry, I think you must be mistaking me for someone else," I say, relieved to be forced into conversation. Conversation has got me past a lot of sticky moments in my life. "Oh no, you're the one I'm supposed to talk to. Mary has been tugging at my sleeve all night. She seemed to think you were going to come into the coffee house for a reading. When you didn't show, she insisted I come looking for you down here. I was there earlier, but I didn't stay. I'm from out of town. I don't really know any Marys here," I say. That could be, but there's one standing right behind you. What can I say? You're a muggle. You're not going to see her. I glance over my shoulder at the open space between me and the spring and look back at the reader. The pagoda lights shine down on her, making her split ends sparkle. Trust me, I've been seeing this stuff since I was a kid. I'm used to it. I don't get Mary in the queue very often, though. This must be important. It starts to feel like I've stepped into some kind of rip in time. It's as if the world shrinks to this small pagoda of light and we're kicked free out into the universe somewhere. She's holding something very small in her arms, the reader says, cradling it kind of. Does that make sense to you? It might, I say, trying to push down the flutter of panic in my chest. Did you, like, lose a baby a long time ago? Not exactly a baby, I say. She's showing me the number 45, like in 1945 or maybe 45 years ago. I can't stifle the gasp that jumps out of my mouth. It's all good, she says. Mary is showing me that she's got you covered. They don't call her the Lady of the Lost and Found for nothing, you know. My mind goes into free fall then, as if it just got pushed out of a plane. But behind the torrent of thoughts, I feel something else flooding into my body. Part of me struggles to push it away, but it comes with a force like water gushing through a spillway. Thank you. Thank you, I hear myself say. Don't thank me. I'm just the messenger. Mary's the one who's got your back. Well, thank her for me then. No, don't worry. She hears you loud and clear, sister. Do I owe you anything for this? I managed to stammer. Well, it was a bit of a slow night at the coffee house, but if this gets Mary off my case, it's worth doing a freebie. I pull out the $20 bill that I had tucked into my phone case and push it into her hand. Please take this, I insist. If you insist, she says as she snatches the note and jams it into her bra. I'll leave you and Mary here, she says. I need to go home and get some sleep. When I get back to our hotel room, Harley is brushing his teeth with the bathroom door open. He spits a stream of Pepsodent into the sink and says, there you are. I was starting to wonder what happened to you. Good walk? Yeah, it was great, I say. I feel so much better. I thought you would, he says, and goes back to sawing on his molars. The thought comes to me that maybe Harley had set the whole thing up. Maybe after all these years of stepping back while I duked it out with my demons, he finally hit on a plan to put an end to my torment and his. It can't have been easy for him. He could have hoofed it up to the coffee house and paid Nicky to track me down and say all that stuff. Harley turns on the tap and fills the hotel glass with water. The light over the sink bounces off the surface of the water and plays across his face. Harley, I say, and wait while he gives his mouth a final swish and rinse. Yeah, he says. He's got his glasses off to wash up, so he squints at me, trying to pull me into focus. Other than a frosting of toothpaste on his mustache, nothing in his face speaks anything but his normal, reasonable self to me. Never mind, I say. What, he says. It's nothing, I say, but thanks. For what, he says. For all of it. Are you okay, he asks. Better than ever, I say. Let's go to bed. Thank you. So I'm not going to read more. I will say though, however, if anybody's interested in buying a copy, my wife has got some copies over there. You can see us at the break or afterwards, and I'll happily sign it up for you to you or whoever you might want to pass it along to. If there are any questions, I will gladly answer them. Yeah, I'll tell you, it feels a little bit weird to be, you know, I'm hosting myself and then I'm selling my book and, you know, but anyway, it's all good. It's all good. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So the story, you know, gives you a lot. So you really know where this character is coming from. Yeah. It's hard reading excerpts. Yeah. Yeah, it came at different times. It's sort of,
Derek, excuse me, can you repeat the question? For
oh,
our
certainly, yes.
Zoom
Yes,
friends?
thank you for reminding me, Char. Yeah, so the question is, how did the stories come? Did they come in sequence, over how long a time? And I have to say, this collection is like it was over 20 years in the making. And partly that's because I taught full-time. And so I wasn't a full-time writer. I'm a full-time writer now. But, I sort of squeezed my writing in where I could, and mostly in the summers when I wasn't working. So, and I kind of went through a phase where I kind of wrote a lot of autobiographical stories. They were like creative nonfiction, and then they morphed more into fiction. And then I went back into sort of straight fiction as well. So yeah, it's been a long time coming, this collection. So yeah, so it's kind of like when you've been carrying something around that long, there's a certain sense of of relief to get it out in the world. Finally, it's done. But it's also you kind of have a lot of ownership about it. You feel like this is a big part of my life I've wrapped up into this book. And so I think of all the books I've published, this one's probably the closest one to my heart for sure. Yeah. So thank you for that question. That was great. Yeah.
Derek.
Yes.
Herb. Hi. Creative nonfiction. This category eludes me. So if you're telling your story as a fiction or as a short story,
yeah,
can your character do things that you never did do?
Well, and that's where the creative part comes in, Herb. So, creative nonfiction, by saying it's nonfiction, means that it's all true in terms of the general things that happened. The creative part is that when you go back to make it into a story, to bring it to life, of course, you're going to have to invent things. Like you're going to have to invent the dialogue. I mean, you're not going to remember everything everybody said. And there's a certain amount of latitude given, I think, for being able to add in details. Who can remember what was in the room that day? And so you can add in details and create that and not stray beyond creative nonfiction. Once you start to add in, other characters or things like that, or, changes in the plot line, then I think you start going back towards fiction, and it just becomes more autobiographical fiction then. So, over the years, I'd say these categories, these genres, the lines have really become gray and blurred, and I think that's a good thing, because sometimes the truth of a situation needs a little bit of fiction to be brought out, So I kind of delighted in taking a little bit of latitude with some of these stories to add in some things. But yeah, does that kind of clarify it? Does that help?
It helps some, yeah. I'm going to have to continue studying it. Thank you.
Good, yeah. So, you still have the license to lie like a fiction writer, but you're writing stuff that's true in terms of what happened. Okay. All right. Okay, I think we're going to take a little break now for about 10 minutes. Give everybody a chance. 5 minutes? Okay, 5 minutes, because we're running short on time. Everybody have a little bathroom break if you need it. Refresh your drinks, and we'll see you all in about 5 minutes' time back in the Zoom. Test 2, 3. Can anybody hear me out in Zoom land?
Yes, yes.
We can hear you, geen tacht.
Good, thank you so much. We got the mic problem fixed.
Say hi, Derek.
Hi, Derek.
All right, we're going to get started again, folks. All right, everybody. Cover the mic. Okay, everybody, we're going to get started. Hopefully I didn't blast anybody out of Zoom land with that. I tried to cover the mic.
Okay, Char's landing in house. We're getting ready to start again. Derek, who's our next reader?
So welcome back, and Sydney Preston is our next reader, and I believe Sydney's in the house here. Yes, no, was supposed to be. Oh, she didn't make it tonight. Oh, okay. Well, I guess we're not going to hear from Sydney tonight. Now, got to figure out how to do this so I can be in the Zoom and be on the microphone at the same time. There we go. All right. Can you hear me okay in Zoom land? Yeah. All right. So, lacking Sydney, we're going to go on to Herb Bryce then. And Herb is coming to us from Maple Ridge tonight. Is that correct, Herb?
Hi, yeah, that is correct. This is the traditional lands of the Katzie peoples.
Nice.
So I have 2 poems for you tonight. I think I can make it under 5. The first one comes out of such things as the George Floyd murder, the pandemic, and so on, and on to the current mini Third World War we're viewing, and nobody wants to go in and handle more rifles and bombs against that big enemy. So what the world needs more of. What the world needs more of is the human touch, the pat on the back, the warm handshake, and most of all, the hug. What the world needs more of is a word of encouragement, a hint, a clue, a cue on how to do that thing that you are. A look in the eye and nod of the head, a thumbs up and here's to you in this endeavor of yours. What the world needs more of these days is less of the sharp tongue, the coiled fist, the blasphemy, the threats, the anger, the bitter revenge, the carping, the ignoring of others, the using of others, and the hands that never help. What the world needs more of these days is a whole lot less of the gaslighting evil, the bragging and the shouting and the cursing and the criticisms, and a whole lot less of weaponizing religion. Yes, what the world needs more of these days is moderation, charity, helping hands, and polite politics, the taking better care of nature, and of course, peace. Hands across the borders, smiles of encouragement to help each other get there to basic universal love. Thank you. My second poem is one that I read to a group in Minnesota in the US. It has some fellow old fogies in that group, a great bunch. And Two of them thought this poem was by Walt Whitman. Forgotten people. Forgotten frontiers, forgotten roots, forgotten pioneering boots, standing bleached by wind and rain, standing still but can't sustain beneath the lowering, darkening cloud that with a clap of thunder loud would race our pioneering past, the story that was built to last. Every shingle, every board, every wind and every cord so back-breaking hewn by calloused hand to craft a home, to build a land, to fill with heart and dwell with soul, once left behind to the bad dust bowl, forgotten now and left to rot, as we go headlong on without a thought. Forgotten now the soul who built the life that now we live without the guilt. We forge ahead, forever getting rarely give, even forget the art of how to live. Forgotten history, forgotten folks, forgotten that we have a wheel. To have a wheel, you need a spoke. Forgotten frontier, forgotten roots, forgotten pioneering boots. Sometimes we forget the role we play and strut the stage, demand the pay. Play the hero, forget to bend, while friends and family reach wit's end, left behind in wind and rain, unable to sustain. Forgotten minds, forgotten roots, left behind by walking boots. Forgotten frontier, forgotten roots, forgotten pioneering boots. Thanks much for listening.
Beautiful, Herb.
Oh, thank you. I could hear that. Lovely.
The house is going wild here.
Thank you.
That was awesome.
Thank you.
I think you better post those online. People need to hear those messages over and over again, especially at this time. That was beautiful, Herb.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. All right. Bill Engleson actually has come online now. There you are, Bill. Would you be wanting to read still? Because we can slot you in right now if we can.
Well, I will, but I mean, I'm a Johnny come lately and I screwed up the time. So, but okay, sure. It'll be quick if you're okay with that.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. We're always happy to hear your reading.
Okay. Well, I'm going to read the little story I was fortunate to have in Geist magazine, this latest issue. Took second place, which was kind of almost where I wanted to be. I was very thrilled to have it here. It's called Fidelity. 1969, Tabor. You drink enough beer and the floor isn't so bad. We had shekels enough for a motel, but our new buddy Charles offered us tolerable accommodation. Lonnie got the couch. I got the air mattress. That was a moment. My well-oiled body loved that air mattress. 2020. I haven't moved from this chair in 15 years. Hyperbole, eh? But I spent a ton of time here, pouring out reminiscences, bits and pieces, moments. Can't believe they've kept so well. It's all so clear. Clear as a virus. Clear as memory. Where was I? 1969, a day later. The best thing I could say about Lonnie's beater was that it was demolition derby worthy. And that's being kind. An early 50s Austin or a Hillman, Brit jobby anyways, burned oil like a tramp steamer. Conked out in the pretty little town of Wolseley. We dumped her on the main drag, scurried back to number 1 and hitched our way to the peg. Lonnie knew a chick, pardon me, a young woman, Dora. Figured we'd crash at her place, catch a bus when we were good and ready. Once we settled into Dora's digs, it turned out Lonnie wouldn't be good and ready. They had history. First kiss, age 12, he was. She was 13. Older woman blues clung to him like a cobweb. 2020. I watch the travel shows these days. Beachfront hullabaloo, that sort of show. Seaside condos, getaway places. Even during this pandemic, people are trying to get away. Not me. Once, maybe. Cuba. 1969, 2 days later. Splurged on a train ride. Safer, easier. Lonnie said, I can't leave her again. Traveling companions, men of the road, harpooned in Winnipeg. Too young. In my head, I was off to Cuba, help Castro bring in the crops. No real plan, just a big fat dream. Caroline and Pat were friends of friends. Caroline and Trish were once simpatico. Trish was acey-deucey, sexually, I mean. Is that the term? Anyways, Caroline said, sure, bunk in, love to have you. A little apartment above a grocery store, Young Street. No air mattress, though. A pull-out couch. I adapted. Beggars can't be, can they? 2020. I could count the number of years if I had enough fingers. My little joke. The years count themselves, don't they? They're relentless. 1969, August to October. I couldn't seem to find my feet in TO. Aimless, I suppose. Lazy. Early August, C and T left for Woodstock. Had the place to myself. They said, come with us, it'll be a blast. I said, saving to go to Cuba. That was a big lie. I lingered on. In October, I headed back to the coast. Stopped off in soon-to-be Winterpeg. Lonnie's gone, Dora wailed. He left me for Cuba a month ago. She looked broken. 2020. Lonnie and I keep in touch. Close, but distant, you know. Never quite adjusted to Dora and me. Here she comes, bringing me my evening tea. Better wrap this up, pay her some attention. And that would be the end.
Thank you so much there, Bill, for jumping in on short notice and sharing that. I can see why it won the prize there, or second prize anyway. And just to get into Geist is a coup, so it earned its place. Beautiful. Excellent. All right, we'll go back on track here then, and we've got Jennifer Wenn lined up there in London, Ontario. Evening, Jennifer. How are you?
Not too bad. How are you?
Very good, very good. Looking forward to hearing what you're going to share tonight. I'm somewhere in the poetry vein.
Yep, two pieces. The first is called Memento Reverie, and it came from a dream that I had. A time before time, spectral and yet existent, out of mists and ether, shadows crystallize and anneal, an ancient emergence made new, and nascent, I am there. Transfigure to temporal, build and flourish, burgeoning material and material, in swirl with enlightenment and vision, grasp light in defiance of darkness, divine the secrets, and novitiate, I am there. Amidst endless seeming radiance comes the warning, stark and final. Midnight is on the prowl. The great command, preserve our essence, emblazon the annals, secure them safe from maelstrom. The light then transformed to darkly lustrous runes, lovingly, fearfully, dauntlessly implanted in a chamber deep, and suddenly venerable, I am there. An age slips away under brilliant, blinding night, much seemingly gained, much apparently lost. New veneers piled layer on layer over truth forgotten, but yearning still for release, waiting for advent of revelation, yearning for me to be there. Ghostly apparitions beckon, once mute bones begin to whisper, an inevitable, long-awaited excavation bores ever inward to a hidden catacomb, cradling inscrutable memory that defies easy epiphany. And I appear because I know, only I now know, for realization dawns that I was there. Thank you. Now, for the second one, if it's possible for me to easily share screen just for a minute for a book cover? Is that doable or not? If not, it's okay.
Go
Char,
ahead and try.
go ahead and give it a shot there,
just,
Jennifer.
I've just set it so you could share screen. Is that working?
Let's see.
There, it's coming now.
Okay, it's coming. I just got it. There it is.
Wonderful.
Wow.
Okay, here, this is, I wanted to do the second piece from this. This is a new anthology. As you can see, it's in support of Ukraine. The funds go to PEN Ukraine, the Ukraine chapter of PEN International. It's been edited by Penn Kemp and Richard Eves Satosky. The latter is the poet laureate of Owen Sound. Penn Kemp is probably very well known. Former poet laureate of London, former writer in residence at Western, former writer in residence somewhere out in BC and other places, and author of a zillion books. The book itself is $25 plus, I think, $6 postage. There are 48 poets, something like 120 pages. There's a real A-list in here, apart from Penn and Rico. We've also got people like Susan McCaslin and Susan McMaster. George Elliott Clark, former poet laureate of Canada, is in there. Marianne Micros, Harold Renish, and on and on and on. And they made a little room for one of mine as well, which I will read now. This was written, and I'll put, by the way, to order it, I'll put the Richard's email address, which is where the orders go, so you can communicate by him. I'll stick that in the chat when I'm done. My piece was written very early after the invasion, and it's called Kaleidoscope for the Invasion of Ukraine, February 24th, 2022. And there's a little bit of language and, of course, difficult images here and there. A murderous despot festers at one end of a ridiculously long table, his sycophants huddled at the other. Tanks grind and clank through the mist. Russian warship, go fuck yourself. An obliterated fuel depot shatters the night. Utter chaos at train platforms leading away from the shells, bombs, and missiles. One man blocks a tank, pushes on it with his hands, and kneels in front of it. Families and pets jam into a subway station, become bomb shelter. An unexploded missile nose down through the pavement. The fight is here. I need ammunition, not a ride. A school with a gaping hole blown through the wall. Still smoking wrecked Russian vehicles, bodies splayed alongside on the road, and a teddy bear mascot from a distant home cowers in the dirt and debris. Young adults march in protest in Moscow despite assurance of arrest or beating or both. A flattened apartment block reduced to dust and rubble. A mother comforts her disabled daughter in a basement. Orphan toddlers hole up with their caregivers in another basement. A Ukrainian man protests in front of Russian soldiers. A crack, he crumples. A grandmother armed with Googled instructions prepares Molotov cocktails in her backyard. A man climbs onto a moving Russian tank to defiantly wave a Ukrainian flag. A very elderly survivor of the siege of Leningrad protests in St. Petersburg with her homemade signs and is bundled off to jail. Ukrainian mothers pray for their combat-bound sons and knit camouflage netting. At a border railway station, a phalanx of baby strollers bestowed by Polish mothers awaits fleeing refugees. A mother and her two children run to cross a road. A missile streaks in and explodes. All three fall dead. A murderous despot festers at one end of a ridiculously long table. as sycophants huddled at the other. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, beautiful, moving poem. Those images are, so many of them are burned into our brains, I think, but your words bring them to life again. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on then with our next reader here in Char's Landing live. Vicky Drybow is up at the lectern, and she's going to read something for us tonight. I don't know if it's prose or poetry, but I'm going to guess it's prose. Yeah, okay. Thanks, Vicky, and we'll get you to just hang tight at the lectern when you're done, so I can just give you a little praise before you go. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, it's great to be together at Char's again. You know, the weather, I don't want to talk about the weather really, but it has been a determining factor in people's moods around here, I think, for a long time. But I just wanted to say that in the last week, I have never been so overwhelmed by cloud formations in the sky. They're just stunning. And so if there's a positive to anything, it's the beautiful things that are happening in the sky during this sort of tumultuous spring. Anyway, on with what I was going to do. This is a chapter from my novel, and it's near the end, somewhere around chapter 35 or whatever. And first couple of pages I will read to you. It's called A Thin White Scar. The two cops were young, probably in their late 20s. The homeless stood in a small group around the body. I couldn't take my eyes off him. I wanted to kneel beside him and cradle him in my arms, but at the same time, the urge to turn and hurry away was almost too strong to resist. The breeze blew a thin strand of greasy gray hair across his cheek, the cheek with a jagged white scar still visible above the patchy gray beard. The female cop flipped open her book. Does anyone know his name? There was silence for a moment. Then one of the homeless men mumbled something. Speak up, said the cop. Counselor. He said he used to be a lawyer, so we called him Counselor. I wanted to say his name, but I couldn't because I didn't see how it could possibly be him. I first saw Dominic Fairchild when he walked off the ferry with his mother. They stood out because they were new. Just as I was about to climb into my girlfriend's mother's car, he turned his head and looked at me. He was handsome, almost beautiful, in a short-haired, pale way. Then he smiled, and I couldn't help but smile back. The ballet was lovely, and Lynn's granddaughter was a sensation, but I couldn't focus. I kept seeing him lying there, not moving, blue eyes staring, beard and lanky gray hair obscuring most of his face. I kept asking myself if I was only imagining that it was him. It was 45 years ago when I banished him from my life. The man I saw lying on the street had skin that sagged around his sunken eyes like a deflated balloon. Cheeks and forehead blotchy and reddened from the elements. There was nothing I recognized except the ragged white scar on the cheek below his left eye. That scar had made me look again, look closely at the eyes, the shape of the face. He had always been thin, but there seemed nothing but bones lying there under his clothes. The three of us went to the hotel bar for a drink after the performance. It was warm, filled with soft leather furniture and spotless, shiny surfaces. Clean, safe, and beautiful. I felt out of place and undeserving of such luxurious surroundings. Who was he? Both of my friends were looking at me. I don't know. He might be someone I knew a long time ago. When you were at university? Before that. I only wanted to think about the early days before it got complicated. Did you go to school together? No, he was older, but we were friends, all of us. It must be very upsetting to see him like that, said Yvonne, who was my oldest friend. She now seemed distant, as if she didn't know me at all, as if I had fallen into another world, an older, darker world that belonged to a time long before I knew her, when everything was different. Some guys get scars from playing sports, like rugby or hockey. He didn't play sports. He got it in a fight. But this wasn't him. I was sure now. The body was too small. Bodies shrink, but bones stayed the same size, didn't they? It couldn't be him. I was overreacting as usual. It was ridiculous to think that the dirty old man lying dead on the street was him. I would put him out of my mind and enjoy my holiday. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vicki. That was awesome. And you know, I've had the pleasure of seeing a lot of the chapters of this novel as they come along. And I have to say that one chapter has got to be one of the best in the whole book. So I can't wait till it's all done and we're doing you as a feature reader here. So let's make that day come soon, okay?
Thank you, Derek.
Okay, thank you. All right, our next reader is going to be zooming into us from Gibson's there. David's going to go first tonight, I think, is the way my list goes anyway. And then, yeah. but it's, you can duke it out. I'm okay.
Okay, I think I'm live. Yeah, it's a short one. I was, I don't know if the word is consoled about my writing, because I've got an edition of Jane Austen's Persuasion. It's 230 pages. And I found out today that another Jane Fonda, has an autobiography, 800 pages. So imagine how much better a writer Jane Fonda is to produce so much. Okay, he unbuckled the suitcase under the cold eyes of the uniformed officers and began to bend over its contents when the woman's sudden voice halted him. In Lebanon, back in the Rashidieh settlement, Adawi's father had pulled out the faded suitcase and dusted it off. Take. Best you have something of home with you in Canada. This was your grandfather's suitcase, before me, before they fled the homeland. Adawi had stiffened at this omen of yet another boring family story, another duty to remember and grieve. Before France had abandoned Lebanon, the French built Rashidieh settlement to hold Armenian refugees. Adawi's father shook his head. Some kind of Christians. Now this place is only good enough for us Palestinians. And he spat in the sand. Lucky you never knew the Nakba, the eviction from our homeland. Here you are in Lebanon, look at you, so handsome, school certificate, trade certificate, Western clothes, so smart. Take the suitcase. Adawi was embarrassed. The case was battered like his parents' house in the Bekaa after Israeli Phantom jets struck out of the clear blue sky. His father smiled through broken teeth. On my next journey, I need no suitcase. Your mother, she will meet me in Alam, in heaven. Look at me, Adawi. You think this old man is going off on tourist travels, fancy resorts with a suitcase? Adawi's uncle Habib in Canada ran a Goodyear tire franchise in Cornwall, Ontario. Habib Kanafi had been sending money and advice for his nephew, sending it out of compassion and from a wish to demonstrate by this generosity how immigration could lift someone free of the poverty of the Bekaa Valley. Between them, Adawi's father and Uncle Habib had arranged Adawi's immigration. Now half a hemisphere away from Beirut, bitter white flakes had streamed around the Boeing's fuselage as it taxied and then drew to a halt at Montreal's terminal building. The glass and steel were shabby, not at all like Beirut's Rafik Hariri airport, where Adawi's airline had lifted off. Adawi would transfer to a short-haul plane for Cornwall. There, next to a squeaking baggage carousel, Uncle Habib would no doubt be pacing the arrivals lounge and checking his wristwatch to demonstrate that he was a busy man of affairs. Here in Montreal, Adawi shrank nervously in his jacket, jostled by the tide of tall North Americans who smelled of soap despite the 9-hour flight, and who took up so much space as they commandeered the center of the carpeted corridor. Uniforms and barriers and so many notices in English and, thank heavens, in French too. Adawi's father, a bricklayer, had often pestered Adawi to learn some working French, to curry favor with Lebanon's merchant class. To visit Beirut, a man must speak French or wait at the kitchen door to wash dishes. But here the officials did not smile. Adawi was a supplicant and bore in his complexion and demeanor so many alien cues that he felt a target for suspicion. He fingered his beard, clipped short just yesterday. Was it respectable? Hey, don't lean over the case. Step back, step away from the case while we examine it. Thank you. Officer Gentil waved her clipboard at Adawi. Is this your suitcase? Adawi was baffled. Were his shoes his shoes? Was his thumb his thumb? Yes, madam, it is my suitcase. The dog was led to the counter and snuffed eagerly at the suitcase. Sir, do you have chemicals in there? Detergents? Adawi didn't understand. Cleaning agents of some kind in your suitcase? He shook his head and they gestured for him to go with them to a separate room. Adawi recalled the roadblocks of clan militias, Druze, Maronites, Sunni, all of them that had harassed his family. Separate room had meant trouble, pushing, shouting, bribes. He stood wordless while a male officer wiped a magician's wand among his belongings in the suitcase, stirring his clothes. The wand stopped. What's this, sir? What's in this bag? Adawi's father had pushed the pouch into his suitcase before Adawi had departed, saying, for you to remember our story, our tragedy, inshallah. The leather pouch had a flap secured by a large stainless pin, an incongruous diaper pin from among the miscellaneous aid supplies that UN agencies delivered to Rashidiyeh. Chantal Tailleur studied Adawi's passport while he stared at her, amazed. She had 2 golden rings in one nostril like an Arab girl and green fingernails like a bad woman. Sir, I want you, when I tell you, to slowly unpin that pouch and step back. Oui, reculez, éloignez-vous. You understand, d'accord? The 3 officers stood further away, one aiming a small camera. Adawi unpinned the flap, lifted it away and stood back. Inside the pouch lay a jagged blue-grey shard of an Israeli rocket casing and an old wrought iron key nearly half a foot long. For years these had rested on a high shelf at home. The key had once fitted the door of his grandparents' long-abandoned house in Beersheba before 1948. Chantal leaned to receive a murmur from another man, a senior official in a suit. She nodded and whispered her reply. Unasked for, undesired even, these objects are now made his. But here in Canada, they accused him, marked him, imperiled his chances. Adawi trembled. Chantal spoke again. Mr. Kanafi, please sit down there. We're going to ask you some questions. Faut poser des questions, non? Interrogation, one of many in Adawi's youth and adulthood. Then the woman smiled. It's okay, I understand what these are. Je connais bien ces trucs, ces choses. Objet de famille, non? It's okay, c'est normal. You can explain. We are listening. On vous écoute. Adawi saw nothing but green fingernails and grey missile fragments through his relaxing tears.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you, David. I think you just proved that you don't need 832 pages to write something good. It's all about quality, not quantity, right? That's why we do short fiction. Super, thank you. All right, we'll pass it over to Kathleen now. The other
Oh my gosh, and now for something completely different. Anne held the tissue over her mouth to keep out the radiation, just like the teacher had told the kids to. Like that'll do any good. I hate these bomb drills. Anne sneaked a look at the other kids under their desks. Fred looked confused. He probably forgot what the siren was for and was just copying the other kids. Ginny was holding her tissue tight against her face as though she really believed it would save her. Sally was looking around, checking that the other kids were doing what they were supposed to. Barry was shooting little bits of scrunched up paper across the floor under his desk. The new kid was curled up into a little ball. Anne was so bored she could totally go to sleep if it weren't so cold and uncomfortable on the floor, and if the siren weren't so loud. And if it weren't for that screeching giant bird that had just flown into the room. It had eyes like great big ping pong balls, a neck like a skinny super long accordion, wings that were as wide as the room, and enormous claws. Anne suddenly remembered what the woman mathematician had said in the giant claw movie. "Don't move, the bird is attracted to anything that moves," Anne shouted. But Danny and Lee never could sit still, and the bird was about to give them both the big squeeze, one in each claw. Just in time, Danny and Lee ran and grabbed the reading books out of the cupboard and threw them into the giant claws, one at a time. Anne wanted to help Danny and Lee, but suddenly everything in the room that was made of metal started flying towards each other. The stapler flew across the room to stick to the globe, which was spinning faster and faster on its way to the metal wastepaper basket. "Oh no, it's the magnetic monster. It makes everything metal stick together." Then Anne caught the thing out of the corner of her eye as it headed into the cloakroom. The thing is very tall, looks half frozen, has very long fingernails, and feeds on blood. But it wouldn't find any blood in the kids' lunch boxes. So soon it would be coming out, and then it would be hungry and mad. Ginny got out from under her desk and started wandering the room with big staring eyes and lips glued shut, just like that kid in the desert at the beginning of the movie about the radioactive ants that ate kids like they were sugar. That kid had been hiding under the bed, but had escaped just in time. Then Anne smelled formic acid, which is what ants spray on their prey to poison them. And Ginny must have smelled it at the same time, because she stopped, pointed at the windows and screamed, "Them!" Everyone except Danny and Lee, who were still shoving books into the giant claws, looked towards the windows. They were covered by gigantic ants, and they were gnawing their way in. Fred ran toward the door, but stopped just in time before he stepped into the slime that was squishing under the door and spreading across the floor. Now Anne prayed for the thing to come out of the cloakroom, because the thing was from the Arctic and the slimy blob hated the cold. "Come out, thing," Anne cried. Sally ran toward the teacher's desk, but there was no Mrs. Grove, only a 50-foot woman who had just torn the roof off the classroom. She was looking for someone and was just reaching down to get them. Sally screamed. The giant praying mantis roared as it flew about overhead. The principal came running, but he had turned into the incredible shrinking man and was only 2 inches tall, and so no help at all. Anne asked herself what the woman scientist in the movie Them would do. Then Anne knew a scientist would count things and study them. So Anne started counting all the monsters created by the radiation from the atomic bomb. Giant claw, magnetic monster, the thing, the blob, the deadly mantis, the 50-foot woman, and the incredible shrinking man. And Anne was getting calmer until something landed on her shoe. It was a tiny fly, just a normal fly, except Anne realized as she looked more closely, it had the head not of a fly, but of a kid that looked just like Leon and was squeaking in a tiny, teeny voice, "Help me, help me."
Oh my God, you brought back a lot of memories there, Kathy. Those old sci-fi flicks. Staying up late. My sister used to make me stay up and watch them with her. I was terrified. She loved them. But anyway, thank you for that. All right, we're going to go back to an in-house reader now, and we have got Sharon Saunders here live at Char's Landing. So Sharon, go ahead. The mic is yours.
So last time I presented a romance book. This time I'm doing a children's book that I wrote for my grandchildren.
Closer to the mic. Yeah.
Hopefully you caught some of that. I was just saying that I presented a romance book last time, and this time I actually am working on a children's book. I've actually submitted it to a publisher, so hopefully I'll hear back soon. Hey there, my name is Miwok. You know, one of those small furry creatures from your parents' favorite movie, but with the letter M slapped in front of it? No dice? Oh, go on. I'll wait while you ask your parents what an Ewok is. Back so soon? Why do you look so worried? I'm not that bad, I swear. I'll tell you the truth. I won't use bad language. Trust me, I've learned my lesson. I said stinking biscuit a few months ago, and Grandpa's made me clean out the litter box for a week. Oh, this box I'm sitting in? Well, my family decided to move to a small coastal town on the way to the surfing capital of Canada. Wasn't jazzed about the move at first. I heard it rains for days, and I'll miss Smellin and Alice. They're my boys, but yeah, you go where your family goes, right? I also wasn't looking forward to having my cat treats sailing in a sea of brown squares, not to mention my favorite toy, the Feathered Fun, is also missing somewhere among them. Oh, look over there. See those gorgeous girls hauling stuff into the house with Mom and Dad? Those are my human siblings, Lightning Legs and Hollywood. They're smart, kind, and generous First Nations girls, and I'm the luckiest cat alive because they love me a lot. Well, sometimes I consider it lucky. The first time Lightning Legs got her hands on me, she picked me straight off the ground and smooched me within an inch of my life. Can you imagine getting smothered by human lips? Ugh. But the rest is okay, I guess. I do enjoy the lap cuddles and head scritches, and I purr loudly to show both of them how much they mean to me. Lightning Legs loves to run and dance. She has long, dark brown hair. That's fun to paw at while she's sleeping. Hollywood and I watch Korean dramas together, take pictures of totem poles and sing. Well, she sings and I yell. I'm fairly sure we're going to be famous. Maybe we'll even get to meet BTS, that awesome South Korean boy band. I'll leave it there.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Sharon. Hopefully the phone's okay.
It'll be fine.
Good.
I just wanted to tell a little bit more about the story. So my granddaughters are First Nations. And so when I was looking at literature for children of their age group, I wasn't finding a lot of that, or at least there wasn't anything that represented them in a normal way, you know, because First Nations people aren't just all beads and feathers. They're not just all powwows, you know, and even though I included some totem poles in there, these are things that our family actually does. And one of the things that I love seeing or speaking about this story is how they light up. And I know most people, you know, grandparents will write their grandkids stories and it's like, oh, whatever. But even if this never seen publication, it's there in the history for them to read.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, there are so many different reasons to write, and whether they're large or small, they're all valid, absolutely. So thank you for sharing that with us tonight. Appreciate it. All right. And our next reader is local in-house reader, Sean Hanebury.
Hi there. I've got a poem here. Light names, heart-shaped, every escape into my pencil, a light from the candle, a red candle, a mind to believe in. There is a place for this poetry, the mind to remember. where I run to, all I know in strong stories told by storytellers who know who they are, feeling complication far from home. It is a storybook I lift up with my arms, with my shoulders. There is someone getting older. I feel quite sad about who I cannot believe. With the waiting room, I don't know who, and all I must be, the part I receive. It is clear, easy happening. I don't mind in the restaurant, vision eyes, all sorts of things to find. Hey, heart-shaped mind, what is there to find? Light gold pencil, acrobat tomorrow. Song shoulders, poetry laugh, poetry light. All I might with strong hands. I comprehend this that I know must have the strong, serene ring of inner truth. Jumping these small fences, there's a place inside this hate. There are times I do not in this half-do world, in the deep red, thick raspberry that knows the bright white middle path. All that has spoken in my sincerity, existence, a road to remember, an old tune. There is a lot to believe in, the weight of not being there as I run through thick wilderness. Believe in someone, believe in yourself, old friend. Remember me in your heart. Old heart, be my communication and communication breakdown. In the censored world with my story, I recognize you in my eyes. I see your story. I recognize you naked in the olive of life. I run on old paths that know me in the different poles. All I know, what I think is quiet. I crawl to you in the places I have hidden. There are many colors in this kaleidoscope. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, and thank you for the kaleidoscope, Sean. Being your father, I know where many of those images came from, but as listeners, it forces us to go outside of our rational mind and just surrender to the stream of consciousness. So appreciate that. Thanks for reading that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, and our next reader is in-house at Char's Landing as well, and it's Monica Elarus.
Yes,
Did I say that right?
you do, yes.
Oh, good. Thank you. Welcome, Monica.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Keep close to that mic and we'll be fine.
All right. So my name is Monica Elarus, and they call me the Viking. And came to Canada when I was 21. And it's like coming from one planet to another planet. It's very, very different. And this is in the 70s. So some of you that is in this room wasn't born at that time. So I'm not sure if you knew, what I became very interested is in Canadian history and also the politics. So this came in my mind because of COVID. I have been doing a lot of reading. And so COVID has been an extremely good thing. You learn a lot. And so I've been reading history and politics. And this one book just totally took me to the 70s and Mike Duffy. Do you remember Mike Duffy?
Oh, yeah.
A very colorful man. And he was born in Prince Edward Island. And went on TV and went to Ottawa and was hanging around the parliament and the politicians. and lots of scandal with this gentleman. And Harper's right-hand man was Mr. Wright, and he gave Mr. Duffy $90,000. I'm just trying to give a little bit background, because when I have written a poem, and for you to understand a poem, I think you understand it better if I give you this background. And also Mike Duffy's address was on Friendly Lane. So that is how it goes. He goes from Prince Edward Island and to Ottawa, and then $90,000 and Mr. Harper. So I've written this poem that came in to me when I was reading the book and going back to the 70s. And the poem is called Duff, He Huffs and He Puffs and All Fall Down. Once upon a time, there was a little Duff. He huffed and he puffed, and all went up. Duff went on TV, on prime time. I am. He huffed and he puffed, and one match went up. Piggy Duff, look at me, look at me. He huffed and he puffed, and the program went up. Canada, look at me, look at me. And they clapped. He huffed and he puffed, and he loved his mini cream puff. And his body ballooned up and up and up. I'm an islander, the blue. He huffs and he puffs on Friendly Lane and the loo. He huffs and he puffs, and he huffs and he puffs. I'm an Ontarian, the red. He huffs and he puffs with the red hot room and the red balloon broom. And he huffs and he puffs, and one match went up. I'm a senator, as Canadian as potholes. He huffs and he puffs, and ever since 1867, he huffs and he puffs. Someone has to stuff the holes, and he huffs and he puffs. I'm the bagman and more. He huffs and he puffs. Model on the British House of Lords, and he huffs and he puffs, and one match went up. Duff was flying around and buying around. He huffs and he puffs. Right made it right with 90K. And he huffs and he puffs, and one more K, and one more match went up. Harper, the harp, was like a broken harp. Don't know. And he huffs and he puffs and he puffs and he huffs, and all the matches fell down. Thank you.
No, I just want to say thank you, Monica. That was
You're
wonderful.
welcome.
We always love to have performance poetry. That was beautiful. Please come again. All right. Okay, our next reader is Joe Lunchbucket. Our octogenarian in the house is making his way to the podium.
As a youth, I listened to my uncles discussing politics with his old cronies. Since I reached my age of senility, I qualify to air my warped views, but only at Char's. Biden and G20 nations see Russian invasion of Ukraine as a war crime, but does calling it a Holocaust demean Jewish Holocaust that exterminated millions? Is Noam Chomsky America's biggest critic right in saying that if all US presidents were tried under Nuremberg laws enacted at end of WW2, none would have escaped hanging? Is reporter Chris Hedges un-American, equating US past history to Putin's invasion of Ukraine? Do we believe President Jimmy Carter when he said, US is the most warlike nation in the history of the world? Was US defending democracy on foreign shores when they bombed Vietnam with Agent Orange to save them from communism? Can My Lai massacre be compared to Bad Vlad's butchery in Bucha? Have revolutions and wars served as opportune trophy hunts for all bereft of empathy? Did US enact regime change in Chile because they elected communist President Allende? Did God tell George Bush to smite Al-Qaeda, or was it schizophrenia? Did investigative reporters in opposition not demand a psychiatric evaluation because US is a church state and their media monopoly manufactures consent? Does Russia have their own domino theory, and can Putin adopt US Monroe Doctrine and claim he found weapons of mass destruction being used against his tanks and planes in Ukraine? Are collateral damage and cannon fodder the price of Russia's balance of power and youth pride? If President Zelensky had ceded Russia a portion of Ukraine occupied by Russians and promised that Ukraine wouldn't join NATO, would Russia have invaded Ukraine? Stalin displaced us Poles from our homes when he redrew Polish-UK borders at end of WW2, averting the bloodshed Serbs and Croats after Yugoslavia broke up. Could extending Russian boundary to include Ukraine's dissident Russians do the same today? When West keeps sending Ukraine weapons of mass destruction, will President Zelensky talk peace or resist to his last man? Can victory by either side justify the body count? If Trump was still president, would he be aiding Ukraine? Has NATO membership proved ineffective as a peace insurance policy? Are nations civilized enough to accept UN court-binding arbitration? Or will we forever be 21st century barbaric Mongols with war as our industry? Is this why ET has not contacted us to join the Federation of Peaceful Planets in our Milky Way galaxy?
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, thank you. As always, my friend, the tough questions, you pose them. Thank you. Okay. All right, our last reader for the evening is going to be Cynthia Sharp, who is joining us on Zoom, and she's going to share a poem or two with us, and so glad to have you here with us tonight, Cynthia. There you are. I see your smiling face. So nice to see you. The floor is all yours, my dear.
Thank you so much for letting me join tonight. For the past 2 years during the pandemic, I've been working on a new poetry book, just chronicling what we were going through. This is one of the first ones in the book when we were first staying home for 3 months and we didn't know what was really going on. So, alone and together. I open to sky, clouds and blue summer, yield to the peace of lying still. Back eases into alignment, injuries subside. This life I wish I'd shared with you. I surrender to solitude, creation and writing time, focus, lying in wild daisies like I did in my 20s, wishing you were with me, that we hadn't been cut apart. It's the kind of July day when mellow music drifts in windows over neighbors' watering lawns. You could almost forget there's a pandemic. In Vancouver, a break between bouts of wildfire, smoke, water shortages, and heat waves. For a few days or weeks, an almost normalcy. Sounds of peace, open time, mallards, cypress and wind, the hail of uninterrupted leisure, of choice. I keep going back to the window, a calm, safe life beyond these walls, mild adventure, connection. I dance dreams into plays, existence a learning curve, starting and ending on gratitude. When the sky cools, I look to the sunscapes the glass jars on the counter create on the wall, each one different, catching the light in a unique way. The black cherry jar, a mirage of diamonds, now a hummingbird angel. It's one of those days when the clouds break up into millions, an explosion of atoms into universe, and we lay orange lilies on lawns, a tribute to heroes on front lines. Meditation, rest, then yoga, the relief of accomplishment, an explosion of bright color, living spirit, oxygen released like worlds bursting forth. My breath the sails, propelling me along an ocean. Let me be longer at peace. Hope like islands of grass in the sun. What to do with my perfectly restored meditative energy. Learning to keep wellness for health and service. To let go. I forget everything else I had wanted to say. Just gratitude for community and purpose. Not because there's anything more than this life, but because I value a culture of meaning and kindness. Just by being in the world, you've taught me so much. We stretch like July trees, realizing we've grown. The lightness of free time. Voices cycle past my window in summer evening. The signal of permission. Children's calls. The freedom of not having to be anywhere. A return of time. We're all ordinary these days. Ordinary light. And there's something beautiful in that. End poem.
Beautiful, Cynthia. Thank you. That ordinary light, I think that could be the title of a whole book.
That's what I'm actually going to name it. So I'm so grateful for an endorsement.
Perfect. Yeah, it just jumped out of me. Yeah, ordinary light. That's gorgeous. Super. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your work. It's like having a meditation listening to your read. It just takes me into that zone of peace and into the heart space. Super. Thank you. All right. I think we're gonna close up unless is Robert Gunn still out there? I heard. Oh, Robert, you are there. Did you want to share something before we close up? I had you got a little short piece. Okay, Robert's gonna close the night out for us. Then Robert Gunn zooming to us from Alberni. Go ahead, Robert. Oh, you'll need to unmute yourself though.
Many of you will remember the wonderful poet from Victoria, whose name escapes me, who read in February. And I did a workshop with her, and she introduced the idea of, and Derek can help me here, a pantome.
Pantome, yep. Mm-hmm.
Pantome, yeah. And she also told us about a list of words and when they were introduced into the Webster's Dictionary. And she asked us to pick the year of our birth, which I did. And it resulted in this little piece of doggerel. And you can easily pick out the words. He was no kabushnik after all, only an aerographer's mate with his afterburners on. But I was no party pooper, only an aerographer's mate, just a flight attendant, a flying saucer in the jet stream, complete with clutch bag. Just a flight attendant, despite my bikini on the bar top, chopped liver again, a foul up. A fair trade, despite my bikini on the bar top, drunk tank and a body bag, chopped liver again, a foul up, but perhaps a fair trade. Got a bit screwed up in the lines at the end, but you get the idea.
We get the idea. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you, Robert. Yeah, that was fun. That was fun, and they are a challenge to write, but lots of fun and interesting what they can do in their permutations of the same words. All right, so that is it. I believe we got everybody in, and we've run a little longer than normal, but thank you to all of you who stayed with us. And thank you to all of you who tuned in at any point at all. And really glad that we could have this time together. It was a lot of fun. And I cherish these nights and when we have that time to have our literary community online. So thank you again to Lesley Gentil for that beautiful reading from her book. And hopefully everybody got it in the chat where you can get that. But if not, you can go to Chapters or Amazon. Just reminding you, nice to see your smiling face again, Herb and Jack Thornburg, an old friend. I haven't seen in so long. Beautiful to see you, man. And love to Vel. Oh, there's Vel. Hello, Vel. It's like all my old friends are coming home to roost. It's great. So just a reminder for those who are feeling generous, e-transfer at charslanding.com. Char can always use the support, and big round of applause for Char for hosting us through a challenging evening. I think she did great. Thank you, Char. And thank you again to Jackie Carmichael, our artistic director, who's leaving us unfortunately, but as I said earlier, we're so grateful for all she has done, and I'm sure she's going to keep her little pinky involved with us as time goes on. Yeah, we'll all be happy about that. And thank you to Karl, our moderator here beside me there, keeping things on the straight and narrow, reminding me who I've missed and what I've missed. And what I might miss, and at my age I need that. Yeah. And thank you also to all the people who came here live at Char's. It's so wonderful to be able to gather together again in physical presence and being and see smiling faces and hear spontaneous laughter that's not muted. And may we continue to be able to do that for time eternal. So that's about it for tonight. Thank you all for tuning in.
And thank you to Derek.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks,
Thank you, Derek.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
We couldn't do it without our MC.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And thank you for all the people who read tonight. There was some really stellar stuff came across and so varied and unique and eclectic. I just love it. You just never know what's going to come up at the Electric Mermaid. So for next month, I should remind everybody that we'll be here again the last Wednesday of the month. We've got local writer Laura Sturgeon is on board, and Kathleen and David, excuse me, are coming all the way over from Gibson'S Landing. They're going to be here in person at Char's Landing. So if anybody feels like coming to Port Alberni and catching it live, please do. You can always stay at the hostel here at Char's Landing if you do that. If I had more space in my house, I'd invite you there, but there's no space. So take good care, everybody, in the meantime. Keep writing, and hope to see you all again next month. Good night, all. Sweet dreams.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Oh, that's live. That was great, Derek. Well done.